I'm about to show you something that sounds impossible, growing in backyards, parks, and along roadsides all across this country. Maybe standing in your own yard right now is a common tree whose needles hold several times more vitamin C than a lemon. Not a little more, several times more. It's free. It has been there your whole life. And for hundreds of years, people leaned on it to survive the long winters when no fresh fruit could be had, right up until we all quietly forgot it existed and started paying good money for little bottles of the exact same vitamin instead. This is not a health fad, and it is not a fairy tale. It's the pine needle, and the story of how a simple tea made from an evergreen tree saved entire crews of dying men, and then got forgotten while a multi-billion-dollar supplement industry sold us the bottled version, is one of the strangest things you will ever hear about the tree in your own backyard. And I'll be straight with you the whole way through, including about the one tree you must never, ever confuse this with, because that mistake is genuinely dangerous. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly which tree you're looking for, how to tell it apart from the ones to leave alone, how ordinary people used it to beat one of the deadliest conditions in human history, and exactly how to make it yourself for nothing. But before any of that, let me tell you why this matters, and why the fact that you've never been told it should bother you a little. Vitamin C is not a luxury. For most of human history, running out of it was a death sentence. There is a disease called scurvy, and it is nothing more than the body slowly falling apart from a lack of vitamin C. Your gums bleed and your teeth loosen. Old wounds that healed years ago split back open. Your joints ache, your skin bruises at a touch, and eventually, if it isn't corrected, it kills you. For centuries, scurvy was the great terror of sailors and soldiers, and anyone who had to get through a long winter with no fresh food. It killed more sailors than storms and battles combined. And the cure, it turned out, was sitting on trees the whole time. Here is the story that ought to be famous, and somehow isn't. Back in the winter of 1535, a French explorer named Jacques Cartier was frozen in along a river in what is now Canada, and his crew was dying. Scurvy had torn through his men, dozens of them down, their gums rotting, their bodies failing, graves being dug in the frozen ground. They were, by every account, done for. And then the local indigenous people showed them something. They took the needles and bark of an evergreen tree, brewed it into a tea, and gave it to the dying men to drink. And within days, the men who were at death's door began to recover. That tea brought a crew back from the grave. And the thing in it that worked the miracle was vitamin C, packed into the needles of an ordinary evergreen tree in an amount those sailors could never have imagined. The people who lived on that land had known it all along. The Europeans had to nearly die to learn it, and Cartier's crew was far from alone. For the next 300 years, scurvy remained the single greatest killer of sailors on long voyages. It's estimated to have taken the lives of some 2 million sailors in the age of sail, more than shipwrecks, storms, and combat all put together. Ships would set out with full crews and limp home with half of them, the rest lost quietly to a disease that a cup of evergreen tea or a handful of fresh needles could have prevented. The tragedy of scurvy was never that there was no cure. The cure was growing on trees and hanging on fruit the whole time. The tragedy was that the knowledge kept getting lost, and found and lost again, which is exactly what happened to the humble pine needle in our own backyards. If you've been on this channel before, you know we're all about exactly this, the cheap, powerful, forgotten things the people before us knew by heart, that somehow got lost while we were sold the expensive modern version. This is one of the greatest examples there is. Subscribe right now, because we are gathering all of it back up, one forgotten thing at a time. So let's talk about the tree and the science, because both are remarkable. The needles of a pine and several of its evergreen cousins are genuinely loaded with vitamin C by weight. The needles of a tree like the eastern white pine carry several times the vitamin C of a fresh lemon. On top of that, they're rich in vitamin A and a whole family of antioxidants. This isn't folklore that happens to be charming. It's the honest reason that tea worked for those dying sailors, and the reason indigenous peoples across the cold parts of the world drank evergreen teas through the winter for their health. They didn't have a word for vitamin C. They just knew that the tea kept them well when nothing green would grow. The knowledge was real. It was proven over countless generations, and it cost nothing at all. And it's worth understanding why vitamin C matters so much beyond just it's good for you. Your body uses it to build collagen, the very framework that holds your skin, your gums, your blood vessels, and your joints together. That's why scurvy makes the body fall apart the way it does. Without vitamin C, the collagen breaks down, and everything it was holding together simply comes undone. Vitamin C also plays a central role in your immune system, helping your body fend off illness, and it acts as a powerful antioxidant, cleaning up the kind of wear and tear damage that ordinary living does to your cells every single day. And here's the remarkable part. Unlike most animals, the human body cannot make its own vitamin C. We have to take it in every day from what we eat and drink, which is exactly why a free vitamin C-rich tea growing on a common tree was never a small thing to the people who relied on it. To them, it was survival. So here's the honest question. If a free tea from a common tree has more vitamin C than the fruit we pay for, why has nobody told you? And I'm not going to feed you a wild conspiracy, because the truth is simpler and, honestly, more telling than any conspiracy. Nobody is exactly hiding this from you. It's that there is a great deal of money in selling you vitamin C in bright bottles, in fizzy tablets, in a supplement aisle that pulls in billions of dollars a year, and there is no money whatsoever in telling you it grows for free on the tree in your yard. A free tea has no marketing department. Nobody takes out an ad for a thing you can't be sold. So the bottled version gets pushed to the front of every store, and the tree gets forgotten. It was never suppressed by some grand plot. It was just quietly left out, because a free remedy doesn't make anyone rich. And it's worth understanding how we came to forget something so useful, because it didn't vanish overnight. For most of history, people in cold climates knew these winter teas the way they knew how to split firewood: ordinary, essential, passed down without a second thought. But as the centuries rolled on, two things changed. Fresh citrus and other fruit became available year-round, shipped in from warm places, so the winter vitamin problem seemed solved, and the old teas started to feel unnecessary. And then, more recently, vitamin C itself was isolated, bottled, and turned into a product, something to be manufactured and sold, rather than gathered for free. Between the fruit boat and the supplement bottle, the tree quietly slipped out of memory. Not because it stopped working, it works exactly as well as it ever did, but because we no longer felt we needed it, and nobody had any reason to remind us it was there. Now this is the part where I have to be completely straight with you, because we're about to talk about picking a plant and drinking it. And that means you need to know exactly what you're doing, because while the right tree is a gift, there is one tree out there that looks like an evergreen and is deadly poisonous, and confusing them could genuinely kill you. So let's make sure you know precisely what you're looking for. The tree you want is a true pine, and the classic, safe, historically proven choice is the eastern white pine. Here's how you know it. A true pine carries its needles in little bundles, joined together at the base where they meet the branch, and white pine holds them in clusters of 5 soft, slender, bluish-green needles, several inches long. Soft needles held in bundles. That's your friend. Spruces and many firs are also used for these teas by knowledgeable foragers, but if you're starting out, a well-identified white pine is the gold standard, and I'd stick to it. Let me give you a little more to work with, since good identification is everything here. A true pine always bundles its needles 2, 3, or 5 to a cluster, depending on the kind. And that bundling is one of your surest signs. You're in the right family. Spruce needles, by contrast, attach singly to the branch, but they're short, stiff, four-sided, and sharp, growing from little woody pegs. Spruce is used for these teas too. Firs also attach singly, but their needles are flat and soft with blunt tips. All three of those, pine, spruce, and fir, have been used safely by people who know them well. What they all share is that none of them grows soft red berries, and none of them is the plant I'm about to warn you about. Learn the look of your particular tree cold before you ever brew from it. A good field guide or a knowledgeable local is well worth the trouble. Now here is the one you must never touch, and I want you to burn this into your memory. The yew. The yew is an evergreen shrub or tree with flat, dark green needles and bright red fleshy berries. And it is extremely poisonous, every part of it, and there is no safe amount. It does not carry its needles in bundles the way a pine does. The needles attach singly along the stem, and it grows those unmistakable red berries. If you see red berries or flat needles attached one by one, instead of in little bundles, you walk away. That is not your tea. That is a plant that can stop a heart. A few other evergreens, like the Norfolk Island pine, the ponderosa pine, and various ornamental cypress, are also not for tea. So the rule is simple and absolute. If you cannot identify the tree with total certainty as a safe, true pine, you do not use it. When in doubt, leave it out. This is the one corner you never cut. And one more honest, important note before we brew anything: if you are pregnant, do not drink pine needle tea at all. Some evergreens can be unsafe during pregnancy, and it's simply not worth any risk. And understand that this is a wonderful traditional remedy and a genuine source of vitamin C, but it is not a substitute for real medical care. It's a healthful tea with real history behind it, not a cure for a disease. Drink it as what it is. All right, with all of that firmly in hand, let me show you how to actually make it. Because there's a right way that keeps all that vitamin C intact, and a wrong way that throws it away. First, gather a small handful of fresh green needles from a tree you've positively identified as a safe pine. The younger, brighter needles at the tips are best. Give them a rinse. Then chop or snip them into small pieces, maybe a quarter to a half-inch long, because breaking them up lets the goodness out into the water. Now here is the single most important step, and it's the one most people get wrong. Do not boil them hard. Vitamin C is fragile and a hard. Rolling boil actually destroys a good deal of it. So if you boil your tea to death, you throw away the very thing you came for. Instead, heat your water until it's just steaming and about to simmer. Take it off the heat, pour it over your chopped needles, cover it, and let it steep for around 10 to 20 minutes. You'll watch the water take on a pale golden-green color and a clean, fresh forest scent. Strain out the needles, add a little honey if you like, and drink it warm. That's the whole of it. A free cup of one of the most vitamin-searched drinks you can make from a tree in your yard, made exactly the way people have made it for centuries. A cup a day through the cold months is how it was traditionally used, a warm, pleasant, immune-supporting drink when fresh fruit was scarce. It tastes far better than you'd expect, clean and bright, and a little citrusy, nothing like chewing on a Christmas tree. And it costs you nothing but a walk to the right tree. And the vitamin C is only part of what people valued in these trees. For generations, that same steaming cup was reached for. At the first sign of a winter cold, it's warm. Piney steam breathed in to help clear a stuffy head and ease a scratchy throat, a simple comfort on a cold night. The needles carry aromatic compounds that give the tea its clean resinous scent, the very same scent that makes a walk through a pine forest feel so bracing. None of this is a miracle cure, and I won't dress it up as one, but a warm, fragrant, vitamin-rich cup on a cold evening was a genuine comfort and a genuine help to the people who drank it, and it still is. There's a reason the smell of pine has meant clean and healthful to people for as long as anyone can remember. Let me tell you what got me into this, because I was as skeptical as anyone. I'd read the old stories about the sailors and the evergreen tea, and half assumed it was exaggerated folklore. Then one winter, I had a big white pine in my own yard, positively identified, and I finally tried it, a small handful of needles, steeped gently, a spoon of honey. And the first surprise was simply how good it tasted, bright and fresh, and nothing like I expected. The second surprise was learning that this humble cup from a tree I'd walked past 1,000 times carried more of the vitamin I'd been buying in a bottle than the lemons in my kitchen. I'd been paying for the very thing growing free outside my window my entire life. That's the moment this stopped being a curiosity for me and became something I actually understood, and it changed how I looked at that whole corner of my yard. A tree I'd only ever thought of as something to rake up after every fall turned out to be, in its own quiet way, more useful than half the things I'd been buying in bottles. It made me wonder what else I'd been walking past my whole life, calling it scenery, when the people before me would have called it medicine, or food, or a winter's worth of health. Let me put the cost in perspective, because it's almost funny. A bottle of vitamin C tablets costs you real money month after month, and it's the same nutrient your body was built to get from food and drink. The tea costs you nothing at all, a walk to a tree, and 10 minutes with hot water. One is a product somebody sells you. The other is a gift that's been standing in yards and forests the whole time, asking nothing. This was never expensive. It was just never explained. Now, let me answer the questions I know are coming. Which trees are actually safe for this? The eastern white pine is the classic, safe, well-proven choice. And many spruces and firs are used by experienced foragers, but only ever a tree you can identify with total certainty. Which do I absolutely avoid? The yew above all, flat needles, red berries, deadly plus ponderosa pine, Norfolk Island pine, and ornamental cypress. And if you can't positively identify it, don't use it. Can pregnant women drink it? No, pregnant women should avoid pine needle tea entirely. Does boiling really ruin it? Boiling it hard destroys much of the vitamin C, which is exactly why you steep it in hot, not boiling water. What does it taste like? Clean, bright, faintly citrusy, and piney. Genuinely pleasant, especially with honey. How often can I drink it? A cup a day through the cold months is the traditional way. And can I use dried needles? Fresh green needles are best for vitamin C, though you can dry and store some for winter. Just know fresh is stronger. Can children drink it? In small, mild amounts, it's been a traditional family drink, but keep it weak for little ones and use good judgment. Will it help if I actually have a cold? It won't cure a cold, but a warm cup of a vitamin C-rich tea is a pleasant, comforting thing to sip when you're run down. Do I need a lot of needles? No. A small handful per cup is plenty. This isn't a case where more is better. And is store-bought pine needle tea the same? It can be convenient, but fresh needles from a tree you've positively identified are the strongest and the closest to how it was always done. Does it have caffeine? None at all. It's naturally caffeine-free, so it's a fine cup any time of day, even in the evening. And when's the best time to gather the needles? Any time of year the tree is green, though many find the fresh new growth in spring the mildest and brightest of all. So here's the whole of it, plain and true. Standing in yards and parks and forests all across this country is a common tree whose needles carry several times the vitamin C of a lemon, a free, healthful tea that people once relied on to survive the winter, that even brought dying men back from scurvy's edge, and that we forgot only because nobody could make a dollar telling us about it. To use it, find a true pine you can identify with absolute certainty. White pine is your safest bet. Steep a small handful of chopped fresh needles in hot, not boiling, water for 10 to 20 minutes and enjoy it with a little honey. Never touch a yew, never use a tree you can't identify. Skip it entirely if you're pregnant and treat it as the healthful traditional tea it is. Do that and you've reclaimed one of the oldest, cheapest, most remarkable pieces of knowledge our ancestors ever had, growing right outside your door. So tell me down in the comments, do you have pine trees in your yard? And have you ever tried this? And where in the country are you? I read every one. Next time, I'm going to show you another common backyard tree whose inner bark was one of the most important survival foods and medicines on this continent for thousands of years, free, abundant, and almost completely forgotten. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and remember, the people who came before us, who lived close to the land, knew a great many things we would do well to remember.